So yeah, welcome to Product Hive event number 233. This is Product Hive's second portfolio review that we've had, and Product Hive LA's first portfolio review. So should be pretty exciting. We have a couple of reviewers here who I will intro in more detail, but as you can see here on the presentation cover, it is Tiffany Koval, a product designer at Casper, and then Carolyn Glasser, a UX design strategist at UX Made Simple. And I also want to give a shout out to our two sponsors, Lucid and Front, for making this event and all other events that we've been putting on this year possible. With the pandemic still sort of at large, the Product Hive LA team has decided to continue doing our events virtually for the foreseeable future. I know Product Hive Utah has already started to have some in-person events. When we get to that point here in California, we will definitely let everyone know. But for now, we're keeping it virtual. And the benefit of that is that everyone across the world can attend these events, which is pretty cool. But keep an eye out on any sort of newsletters or any updates that we send out. And if you are interested in getting our newsletters, I would go to our Product Hive LA meetup page and make sure that you're a member so that you are getting those newsletters. We try to keep it to a monthly cadence. We promise not to spam you. And if we do ever spam you, it's probably something super exciting that you'll be happy to be spammed about, maybe. Anyway, so moving on, just really quick. So Product Hive is a community of product managers, strategists, and designers. We currently span 7 chapters throughout 6 states, and we exist to help each other learn, contribute, and connect through volunteer-led opportunities. So Product Hive was founded in Utah close to a decade ago out of Salt Lake City, and it was brought over to the Southern California area by Austin Marto Corena, who might not be on the call just yet, but he moved over here from Utah, brought Product Hive to LA, and got me on the team, and then I eventually brought Zeke on, and so we've been running it ever since for the last, I believe, 2.5 years now. Oh, well, that's fine. So as far as this event goes, I just want to give a quick overview so that everyone is clear on the game plan. So first, we're going to go with introductions, as I'm doing now. I'll also introduce the reviewers as well as the presenters. After that, we have a specified order of candidates. There are 3 of them, and each one will have 10 minutes to present their portfolio. The reviewers will then provide feedback, which should take another 8 to 10 minutes or so. And after that feedback is given to that candidate, we will also open it up for a quick Q&A, either sort of responses from the presenter or any other questions from the audience, or maybe even feedback from the audience that maybe the reviewers might have missed. And then we'll do that 3 times total. So we have 3 presenters. So we'll go through steps 2, 3, and 4 3 times, once for each presenter. And at the very end, we'll have sort of a final Q&A, wrap up for anyone to ask the presenters or reviewers anything that they might have, provide comment, provide feedback, whatever. And finally, we will have a quick event feedback session, which Zeke will provide more information at the end of the event. Throughout the session, please try your best to send any questions that you might have during the presentation to Zeke Scovrone. You can DM him directly through the Zoom chat feature. And that way he can sort of prioritize them and also ask them in the order that they've come in. Also, after he goes through any questions that were in the chat, we'll give you all an opportunity to sort of just unmute yourself and ask any other question that you might have. So hosts here. So my name's Anar Salayev. I am a product manager at Veo. I'm actually based out of San Diego as of April, but I was in Los Angeles the last 5 years. I sort of co-founded the LA chapter with Austin back in 2018. And I am a co-lead of the product Hive LA chapter along with Zeke Scovron. And maybe Zeke, you can quickly introduce yourself too.
Yeah, totally. My name's Zeke. I'm currently a product designer with Realtor.com. And as Anar said, I've been a part of the Product Hive LA team for, I want to say, a little over a couple years now. I sort of became co-lead shortly after him, and we've just been running these events remotely. And yeah, stoked to be here and excited to get your guys' questions.
Thanks, Zeke. So yeah, any questions you might have, please direct them to Zeke. And the reason for that is so that we don't clutter the general chat box or chat window, I guess. Last time that happened and we missed a bunch of questions, so we wouldn't want that to happen again. And here, as you saw on the first screen, are the reviewers for tonight's portfolio review session. So on the left, we have Carolyn Glasser. She is a creative director and UX design strategist working at UX Made Simple. Carolyn, would you care to unmute yourself and maybe give a little intro?
Hi, everybody. I'm Carolyn. Post-COVID new hairdo, in case people were like, who's that? Okay. Great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to be here. So I'm a creative director and I'm also a UX design strategist. So I've worked in many different parts of design and advertising and marketing and have led UX teams and visual design teams. And most recently, I'm working one-on-one with companies, bringing UX design strategy to them, kind of like bringing big UX design thinking to smaller companies who wouldn't normally have access to it. And so I've kind of gone maybe a non-traditional path with UX design. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Carolyn, and great to have you too. And the other reviewer that we have tonight, her name is Tiffany Koval. If I'm mispronouncing it, I am terribly sorry. But she's a UX designer at Casper. Tiffany, you want to go ahead and give a brief intro and also correct my mispronunciation?
For sure, you're really close. Yeah, my name is Tiffany Koval. I'm also really glad to be here and invited. I'm a product designer at Casper, working on the shop team. And I work closely with PMs and engineers to lead and execute digital experiences for the Casper site. I think the most notable one that I've led recently is a matches quiz, which you'll get to see in September if you go on our site. But prior to Casper, I worked as a UX designer at AG Jeans and DMAI, where I led the end-to-end design experiences there. And like Carolyn, I also have a, I guess, unconventional path. I thought about going into healthcare and into medicine, but at DMAI, I had my first foray into design. And so now I'm a product designer.
Nice. Thank you, Tiffany, for that. Glad to have you both here. Super excited. We met with them a few weeks ago and sort of just, out of the blue, I can reach out to them, and I'm really excited that you guys are willing to provide, I think, this really great service for not only the presenters, who I will introduce in a second, but really everyone else here, in getting a behind the scenes look at the portfolio review process as it normally would take place in a design interview. Cool. And then the presenters. So we have 3 of them, and this is the order that they will be presenting in. They have actually been spending the last couple of weeks preparing a presentation for you all, and we really appreciate your time and your willingness to sort of take part in this. Super exciting. And we'll start with Carolyn Buford-Funk, a PhD and a user researcher at Security Scorecard. Carolyn, would you like to say a couple of words about yourself?
Hi, so I'm also Carolyn, just to make it confusing. So yes, I'm Dr. Carolyn Buford-Funk. I usually just go by Carolyn as well, but you can call me Dr. Carolyn or the other Carolyn, whatever works for this purpose. So yes, my background is in research. I did my PhD at UCLA in cognitive psychology, and from there moved into user experience research. And I'm currently at Security Scorecard, a cybersecurity startup. So it's very exciting. So I really don't do design. I focus on the research side. So that's what you'll see in my case.
Cool. Thank you, Dr. Carolyn. Really excited to have you here. And then next we have Alexis Ross. She is a junior UX UI designer at Strides Development. Alexis, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, sure. So yeah, my name is Alexis. I started out in sales when I graduated college at a tech company and completely hated it. So I shadowed a couple like product designers, UX designers at my company, fell in love with it, took a coding boot camp class at Flatiron for like a year, then transitioned to a web producer role at my job, and then found this really cool opportunity at Strides Development as a junior UX UI designer. And that's where I'm at now.
Cool. Happy to have you, Alexis. Thank you for that. And last but certainly not least, we have Miso Cho, who is an user experience designer at Bridget.io. Miso, you want to tell us about yourself?
I was muted. Hello, everyone. I'm Miso, and I'm a UX designer based in LA. For the last 10 years, I was a flight attendant, and I was always curious about like how people interact with products in plane, like how they interact with in-flight entertainment system or even their mobile devices. I was that flight attendant who was kind of like creepily looking behind their shoulders. And so I was like looking into like what career in tech can I like leverage my skills as a flight attendant and my passion for like product design, and I found UX design, and I decided to like pursue it fully by enrolling in a UX bootcamp. And I was lucky to land my first like UX job with the startup at Bridget. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Miso, for the introduction. And thank you all again for applying to be presenters and putting in the time to put this together for us. I do want to say there were a bunch of other people that applied to be presenters. And if any of you happen to be on this call still, we will have more of these in the future, and you will be the first to know once that's in the works. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then Carolyn, Dr. Carolyn, if you can share your screen, we can get started with your presentation. And just to remind everyone of the order of operations here. So after Dr. Carolyn presents her portfolio for up to 10 minutes, and Carolyn, I will let you know when it's been around 10 minutes. Then the reviewers will provide feedback, again, up to 10 minutes, and I will make sure to let you all know when it's been close to 10 minutes. And then after that, then we'll open it up to any Q&A from anyone else. And I do encourage you to send in any questions you might have directly to Zeke, and then he can ask them on your behalf. If you would rather chime in, please just wait for Zeke to finish up with the in-chat questions, and then feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, and that'll be about 5 minutes. With that said, I will stop sharing my screen and pass the baton on over to Dr. Carolyn.
Okay. Here we go. Okay. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay. And I will get started. I'm just timing myself. So I'm going to be talking to you about improving adoption and engagement in the PathCheck Foundation's COVID app. So just a little more of my background. I started in academic research, worked on some fairly technical kinds of things, but like how we see the world, how that changes from experience, particularly in areas where we're developing expertise. So things like showing that we actually see equations differently with experience with their structure, or demonstrating that classical composers have recognizable styles of composition that can be learned, things like that, mostly quantitative methods, though what I'll be focusing on is qualitative for PathCheck. So PathCheck Foundation was founded in March 2020. They're building privacy preserving technology for public health. They're a nonprofit. I'm gonna do this fast because I designed this for 20 minutes, but it's only for 10. So I joined in May 2020 and was there through October, but I'm focusing on a 2-week design and research sprint in July 2020 to go deep instead of broad and shallow. So we're trying to improve the UX of their new Bluetooth-based digital contact tracing app to win contracts with states and countries. To be successful, we needed residents of these states and countries to adopt and engage with the app, but the UX wasn't great. So my small cross-functional team was tasked with the goal of improving engagement and adoption, and we focused on onboarding and the experience of receiving a notification of potential COVID exposure via the app in this sprint. So there was several things that happened. We evaluated the current onboarding, identified some hypotheses of how to improve it, like moving the EULA end user license agreement later after the value proposition, like simplifying the value prop, including logos from our partners, and details about when and where people might have been exposed. And we embodied that in a prototype and also had a prototype of the then current onboarding. And we tested that via a remote moderated usability study and then used that to data analyze it to improve the experience. So I'm going to focus on the research piece. So we wanted to check our hypotheses, understand if there were any blockers for permissions in the onboarding, just learn some more about the experience of the new thing at the time of getting a notification of potential COVID exposure, and test our hypotheses. We also wanted to learn how experiences might differ by groups. When you're designing for basically everybody, that's really important to be inclusive. So this was kind of the general process. We got participants, got things ready. We ran the studies with 2 pieces, onboarding usability, then the usability of the exposure notifications. We'd wrap up in debriefing session and then analyze. So we used respondent.io for recruitment and screening and payment. We made sure we included as much as we could with our 4 participants, a mix of genders, ages, ethnicities, geographies, things related to how they would understand and be comfortable with technology. So like education kind of phone that they have, concern about privacy, and things around their COVID experience. So their self-reported concern about COVID, how frequently they're outside of their home, whether they identified as high risk or low risk with no personal health information, just high risk or low risk in terms of their risk for COVID. So we made sure we got informed consent. We overviewed the study. We promised to keep the data anonymous and private within our team, so I won't be including any of the raw data here to honor that request. And then we got some general context from them to understand their experience with contact tracing and things like that that would affect their interpretation of the app. Then I shared my screen to show the prototypes, asked them to do a think aloud protocol, counterbalance the order. So 2 participants saw the old design, then the new design. The other 2 saw the new design, then the old design, to control for any bias or order effects. And we just asked them to check it out and measure their success based on their understanding and getting the app into an active state. So this is what it looks like. The older version is on the left. The version that we had just designed is on the right. So you can see the wall of text from the end user license agreement versus our logo and our partners' logos, information about what the app was about, protecting people, protecting privacy. Then we have the EULA, and then information about getting exposure notifications. Then we did the exposure notification usability task. So we had two things: find where you can find that in the app, so the kind of empty state exposure notification index, and then go through the flow of getting an exposure notification. And again, we had defined success criteria. So being able to go through those things and understanding what they're looking at. So there's only one version for this. So this is the empty state screen. And then if you click on that question mark, it gives a kind of explanation of what it means to get exposure notification, how that works with the Bluetooth technology. That'll be important later. So then this is the flow of getting an exposure notification. So it pops up on the home screen, takes you to something that says about 3 days ago, you may have crossed paths. And then again, behind that question mark, the same screen. And then you can also see, instead of an empty index, when you may have been exposed. Then we debriefed. So we talked about what we learned after each session, and we also talked about how to improve the moderation to make sure that we would learn what we needed to learn as we were going through. And then we moved into analyzing and synthesizing our data. Before I get to that, there are some major obstacles and constraints that we're working under. So we had 2 weeks and an agile sprint timeline for everything, the design and the research. We've had a research budget basically just for paying participants, not for any kind of recruitment tools, anything like that. So given those constraints, it only worked well for us to be able to speak to 4 people, but of course like to speak to more. And my time was limited because I was actually split between 2 positions at the time. In terms of the team, we were fully remote, geographically distributed. And for all of us, it was our first time working this closely together as a team. And for the PM and the 2 designers, they hadn't worked this closely with research before. So that's part of why the approach ended up being to do the design first and then the research after. So doing it again, I would do it differently. We also had some engineering constraints, like we couldn't give a location of exposure by design. That's the way the system is built. And to be able to speak to who we needed to do a remote usability study. So back to analysis. So we took all of our data, put it into one spreadsheet with rows for the questions and the moderation guide, columns for the participants. And then we also went through and identified findings at 3 levels. Kind of broad overarching learnings and principles that would apply not just to this particular project, but across projects and even to things like marketing, things that were specific to design and business, and then things that, and a little bit more to this project, and then also the really kind of very specific feedback on interactions and copy and use designs. So here's what we found, and I will keep this brief. The big concern wasn't where the end user license agreement was, which was what we hypothesized. It was really, how are you protecting my privacy? And do I understand this? If I don't trust it. So that was not what we were expecting, but it was really important to learn to make sure that we could have something that people would use. And we also learned there were some problems with the copy, like push notifications and exposure notifications. Both having notifications in the title was confusing. And in terms of understanding what the technology was, the actually best description wasn't either of the prototypes, but was under that explanation under the question mark in the exposure notification flow. So people were did pretty well with getting through this flow. But what we really found was that the idea of getting a notification of your phone that you may have been exposed was really anxiety producing, and people really wanted to know what to do about it, which makes sense when you think about it. But again, we didn't know that going into it. So we wanted to make sure we had something more than the kind of generic CDC recommendations that everybody knew by that point, specific concrete actions that they could take. And so we did include that eventually. So it's some things by user groups. So what we did is now live in several states and countries. We were able to increase trust in the app as measured in subsequent studies. We made it a lot more friendly, and pre-Delta apps like this were expected to make about a 15% reduction in COVID cases. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. It's a lot more friendly, a lot easier to read, more focus on kind of giving a high level or digging in depth. We also have other features like a symptom tracker. I think I'm past time already, so skip that.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Carolyn. You were right over 10 minutes, so I don't want to stop you. I figured you were almost done anyway. But cool. Now we will give Carolyn and Tiffany an opportunity to respond. So either one of you want to chime in first, feel free.
Sure. Yeah, I think your presentation was really well structured. It contains all the elements that I would be looking for in a UX researcher presentation. I think the only critiques that I have is that I'm kind of expecting something a little more general. I know, depending on the company, they might ask you to just go over one presentation or one project, and that's fine. But I think here I'm looking for really like a high level overview, something like goals, problems, process, and outcomes for each project that you're working on, just so I have a kind of idea of like the breadth of work you've done, kind of the industries you've worked in, just something to give me more context to you too, as a researcher. Another thing I noticed is that you use a lot of like we statements. To me, when I hear that, I kind of want to know, well, who are you working with? Are you working closely with someone? And also like for, the stakeholders, did you work with them in the initial part of the research? And I think something that I struggled to is that while well structured, I think that it'd be really helpful for me to see like some of the designs contextualized with your text. So I can see right off the bat, okay, so these are the designs that she's talking about, and this is how it affects it. Like at the end, you have the outcome. I think it would just be better because I get a little bit lost with the text. So just having some kind of visuals would be really helpful for me. But yeah, overall pretty good. Thank you.
Hi. Wow. Amazing project to be a part of. That's awesome. This is an interesting kind of unique situation because normally there'd be like an open role that we would be discussing or something, and you would come in, and so we would be talking about something specific about and like what Tiffany said, you'd be coming in with like a portfolio showing what you've been doing. This is an amazing case study. It goes very deep. And it's awesome to kind of have that in your back pocket when you're going to an interview or a meeting with somebody, to be able to say, if they ask you that, you're like, well, here, I have this, I can tell you, I can show you this, and let's talk about this. But definitely to Tiffany's point, like to, in a traditional kind of portfolio, in a traditional kind of interview, you would come in and be showing or sending ahead, something that showed a couple different projects that you've worked on, right? And maybe, and definitely more high level, like the highlights, like what Tiffany was saying, like what was the objective or whatever your hypothesis and some of the action steps you took and the results. But as far as like a case study, and a complete, project that's actually out in the world happening and helping people, like that's awesome. You've got a lot to work with there and to show and to use to get to wherever you want to go next. I would agree and say that definitely, while it was really deep and thick with, it was a lot of text. And when you don't have a lot of time, having some of those key things of like an objective and just like one sentence is really helpful. I thought the before and after shots were really powerful. And certainly that last slide that showed where you ended up, like you should definitely spend more time on that. Just because you're not the designer doesn't mean that everything that you did didn't help contribute to that project, right? So you should definitely be leveraging the visuals whenever you're working on a project. So sometimes as a researcher, that might mean it's the same for someone if they're a copywriter, right? They're going to have to kind of get with that designer later and be like, hey, can I get those final designs so I can put it in my portfolio? And, you're definitely were clear about here was my role and here were the other people that I worked with, but you definitely should take advantage of the visuals because it turned out awesome. And people are going to really, people are visual. We're all visual, right? So you talked, Anar, should I keep going or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so in a normal conversation interview, like some of the things, like if we were talking about this as one of your projects, I just kind of wanted to throw out there some of the kind of questions that you might get. Like you kind of touched upon a few things. Like one of the things I might ask would be like, what was something that surprised you, or what most surprised you about the process, like what did you think about the process of working, with the rest of the team? Like Tiffany mentioned, the stakeholders, like I'm kind of curious, like who were your stakeholders and how did you give them the results of the research and how did they accept it? A lot of times in companies, like what's so awesome about UX and especially UX research is it's the proof that we need to, make things happen. And so for different stakeholders, like, when I used to work with Zeke and stuff, like it was all about that proof of showing them like the research. So that would be some of the other kind of topics that I think would be really interesting for you to include. And also, I would want to know like what was most challenging for you about the whole thing, but I would also be interested in like what parts did you enjoy the most? What was most interesting to you and what, made you most excited and that sort of stuff. But amazing project and great case study. Dr. Carolyn.
Thanks, Carolyn. So do you want me to answer any of the questions or are we doing something different?
Yeah, unless Tiffany, did you have anything else to add or?
No, yeah, I think, I guess my question for you, Dr. Carolyn, is how does your portfolio site function, I guess? Like what kind of role, what are you looking for, and how are you looking to use your presentation for that? Just to get a sense of like what your goals are.
Yeah, so I have a portfolio, it's online. Let's see. This is what it looks like. So I have my homepage. I really focus on user research roles. So that's what it's focused on. I have a link to my work at Microsoft. First, it's a blog. It doesn't have all the details, but I can share about the case study that I presented, which is more like for interviews. Because my experience for user research roles, that's often a step is to like defend a case study, whether that's a past one or like a theoretical one. And then I have some of my writing, some blog posts, some of my academic papers. And of course I have several of my cases, which doesn't include the one I showed you, not yet anyway. But I have some of my other work on here, like this one is an academic project that I alluded to. So it's not updated, but this is what the interface looked like. The goal was to train the participants in the study to be able to distinguish between these 4 different Baroque and Romantic period composers just by listening to about 15 seconds of piano music. So I have kind of framed it as problem, objective, methods, team, what I did, tools, time, what we did. Should take the learning program off. I have kind of outline of the methods because I also have a lot of details included. So this was a few years of work because that's life in academia. But it kind of goes over the sections, methodology, literature review, researching the experiments, the learning program that I designed with my team, what the test was that we used, the statistics and graphs, conclusions and impact, and the reflection. So that's generally how I've structured most of it. I also have my about page, my resume, contact information. So this is kind of this is more like what I would have attached to job postings as opposed to what I've been asked for in interviews. I was actually interviewing pretty recently. I started my current position in mid-July.
And did they ask for a case study?
This one didn't, but a different one I was interviewing for did, which is what I prepared that case for.
I spent a little bit of time on your portfolio site, super amazing breadth of work and things that you've accomplished in your background, and everything's amazing. Definitely, like, you don't, it would be great to add some kind of visual element to break up some of it's like so good and there's so much meat in there. But like, even if you were to work with like a friend who's a designer to give you some help, to like, which is what we, always like, that's what you do and how you make it happen. But even just to have like a thumbnail or something to like break it up a little bit, and maybe to like be able to collapse some of it under like a more or something, just to make it easier for somebody to like go through it quickly. What you're in a role right now, right? That you just started?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. Sorry, I was gonna let other people ask questions.
No worries. Yeah, we are at the Q&A from well, this is the general Q&A for the presenter. So from audience, presenter, or reviewer. So if anyone in the audience has any questions, comments, or Zeke, anything on your end. If not, we do have, now 4 minutes. So if the reviewers or presenter have anything to, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, we do have one comment from Callie. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Callie says she has a tip for Dr. Carolyn, a small tip to get a favicon for the Squarespace. I guess the Squarespace is showing,
cool.
Icon is showing up, but getting a favicon might be nicer.
Thanks.
So Carolyn, I'll kind of repeat a little bit of what I Slack hit individually, but I'm not as stressed about Carolyn and Tiffany as far as like helping you with your design, because I wouldn't hire you as a designer, but as a researcher per se. And I would say one of the things that I always struggle with when I hire researchers is helping me understand, have we done enough research to make the decision we need to make? And will it drive the outcome I'm hoping to get out of it? And so, and I am totally fine if a researcher says no in their presentation, we did all of this and didn't get what we were hoping to drive either the outcome or answer the question. And I think it's fine to be upfront with that and call out the deficiencies in the analysis to say, yep, 4 participants, maybe not enough or is enough to do whatever it is you are hoping to do. And I'm generally okay with that. And so, yeah, I would, and I do agree that speaking as a dumb executive, who is also loves research and a statistician, reducing the amount of research paperiness in your presentation is almost always a good thing for these types of presentations. But good luck. It's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Super impressive. What a great project to work on. You actually helped so many people.
We tried to. Can't force them to use it, but tried.
Right.
Cool. Nice. That is the time for Dr. Carolyn's portion. Thank you so much for that presentation and the feedback from everyone. That was amazing. One thing or two things I want to call out really quick. All the feedback we're getting right now, I'm taking notes on, and I will send out takeaways after the presentation, both individually to the presenters, but also in our next Product Hive LA newsletter, just on general takeaways from everyone here that is providing feedback, asking questions, giving comments. And yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Carolyn, for being the first to go up. I really appreciate it. And I know you need to hop off. I know you're super busy tonight, so very grateful for you to have taken the time to put this together and present. It's been awesome. But you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Great to meet you. Bye.
Bye.
Cool. All right. Next, we will go on to Alexis Ross. Alexis, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Of course, I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, so I decided to just go on my actual portfolio website and share one of my favorite case studies with you all. It's for a client called Lion Media. I helped build the MVP for this client. And basically, Lion Media is a podcasting streaming service that aggregates conversations happening across academia. So it's kind of like a podcasting service that meets Twitter, where it's a streaming service that goes to different colleges and universities that records conversations that are being discussed and talked about by experts in the field. The app brings together the most thoughtful discussions in a new format, making it more social media friendly. And it's supposed to be like a Twitter meets podcast service. So I'll go ahead and click in and explore more with you all. And then the problem statement that we created was, how can we highlight experts in a world that chases clout? So what the client really wanted to focus on was putting experts on a pedestal versus people who had like a lot of followers or who were just considered popular, but he wanted to highlight experts who had skill and expertise in the conversations that they were talking about instead. So this project actually took 3 months. I worked alongside 2 of the UX UI designers. And like I said before, the challenge was creating a podcasting streaming service that highlights experts instead of popularity. Some of the tasks that I was responsible for was user research and interviews, logo redesign, interaction design, and high fidelity prototyping. So when we started off our project, we started off with user research and user interviews. The first round of user interviews helped us to understand the users better. So we interviewed 6 different people who fit the target audience. And it also helped us to choose a style towel. It helped us create wireframes, and it also helped us create 2 different user personas. So this was the style towel that we created after doing our first round of user interviews. We decided to, I'll talk more about the logo later on, but we decided to revamp the logo, which is here. And I'll show you the old one later on and give you a little bit of walkthrough why we decided to revamp it. But this was the style towel that we created after our first user interview. And then some of the feedback that we got from this style towel was that it was functional, familiar, straightforward. Users said that it seemed like it would be easy to navigate. They loved the side menu color scheme. And they also said that it reminded them of other social media platforms like Twitter, which is a huge win for us because that's kind of the route that we were going for. The 2 personas that we got from our user interviews were first and primary, the news junkie, who would be our primary user. And that basically is a person who basically wants to gain knowledge in a specific topic and that topic that is most important to them. So they're just consuming large amounts of information about a certain topic that they find really interesting. The secondary user is more of a student. This user is eager to learn more about a subject or field or expertise that they're currently studying. So hopping back over to the logo redesign, originally our client gave us this logo right here, which is a microphone and then lion as the logo font and words. And then he used the colors red to represent Republican, blue to represent Democrat, and then I think purple was just like more of a neutral color for him, I believe. So after we tested this logo, we found out that a lot of users didn't know what Mayan was, being that it's a new service. So we decided to add media to the bottom of it, so it's clear that it's more of like a media service. Well, it's a podcasting service, but it's clear that it's in the media family. And then we also decided to revert the colors because we wanted to use Black as our primary color, being that like our target audience enjoyed the dark view mode better than the light view. So after that, we decided to create our first round of high fidelity screens. And this is the onboarding experience. We tested out the screen and we found that users didn't really like the light background. It didn't match the dark aesthetic that we had throughout the platform. And then 90% of users wanted other ways to sign up besides email address. So they wanted things like Google or Facebook, something that's more easier to use and that's more familiar. 80% of users were tasked with creating an account, but proceeded to log in instead. So the primary flow seemed to be login, and then we actually wanted them to press sign up. So in our next round of iterations, we created a high fidelity screen and a prototype that inverted the colors, and we dropped the homepage in the background. We created an account, became the primary flow. We added a sign in with Facebook button, and then we also added these onboarding questions to help us customize what the user would see when they signed up and got onto the homepage. And then the other screen that we tested, going back to the first round of high fidelity screens, was this homepage. 90% of users found it hard to spot event details, CTA, which is right here. And then also 77% of users also wanted a way to view and sort events by particular days. So what we did is in the second round of iterations, we changed this event details button to white. And then we also added a calendar filter, which I'll show you in our prototype right here. So this calendar feature can show events by week, month, and then users will be able to see events by day, which is something that they really enjoyed. And then we also added, we changed the colors of the event detail CTA to white instead, which made it pop more. Another suggestion and feedback that we got from our first round of iterations from our events page was that users felt like they should be able to scroll to this page for more information. Right now, it's currently just tabs that you would click on and it's not scrollable. So in the next round of iterations, we made it scrollable so that it hops to tab when you scroll down, and I'll show you now. And then we just added a couple of hover states as well, just to make the app more user-friendly. Since it is a new app, we wanted users to be able to recognize icons and just familiarize themselves with the new platform. So we added small hover states for like saving events and notifications throughout the page. And then also in our last round of interviews, we actually found that the student persona preferred light mode versus dark mode. So we started building out a light mode for users as well. The student found that light modes came off more trustworthy than dark mode. So we felt that this was a better flow for the student, and that would be like the next steps after. Like if we were to continue this project, the next steps would be continue building out a light mode for users.
Cool. Thank you, Alexis. And sorry, I had to turn my video off. My internet's acting up. But yeah, Carolyn, Tiffany.
Cool project. I love the way, well, I actually have a question for Tiffany and anyone else who's on here. my one thought, like a feedback would be, and I used to grapple with this, like I grapple with this for myself, but when you're showing like a before and an after, a part of me feels like you should lead with the after, because you don't know who's looking at your website and who's like scrolling through. And if someone's not really paying attention and they are just looking for visuals, if you see that before, you're like, okay, whatever, right? So if you led with the after and showed like, this is the thing, and then below, if the person's still going down, then you can say, here was the before, and here's like the different iterations or that kind of thing. I feel like that could automatically just make the whole thing stronger, because you're leading with what's so awesome and, you know, the result, which is what you kind of want to kind of show people if they're not really paying attention, or they're, you know, right, that you've got different levels of what people or how deep they're going to go. So I think that would be kind of an interesting thing for you to try to do on your site, is to try to reverse the order and lead. I used to do this all the time. Like, you'd show the before and you'd have all this crap up there, and it would just take forever to get to the good stuff. And so I think if you reversed it, because the designs are great, the, you know, the executions are amazing, and then you go down and show kind of what the problem was. But anyways, what do other people think about that?
To your point, so I kind of agree, kind of disagree. I actually think what's super helpful is that seeing the before and after, to me, rather than having it stacked before and after, seeing it side by side, and then having an arrow pulling exactly, okay, this is the section. Because when I'm looking at it, I see text and trying to decipher. I think it'd make the work easier on me. What I see a lot of designers doing in their portfolios is having that arrow showing what changed. And I think another opportunity too that I've seen, which is also really effective, is that you can lead with maybe your solution. Some designers like to do that. I think if you can make it work, it can be really effective. But yeah, you can show what the final solution, maybe a screen, and then you have your before and after. And at the end, you know, right before your conclusion, you can have the prototype there. So there's like some more context to the full breadth of what you did. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
What was your favorite part of this whole thing? What parts did you enjoy the most?
I really enjoyed creating the style tile and like the look for the app, because I did make the MVP for it, and the client gave us a lot of room in order to like revisit the designs that he already had, and just reworking the logo and working with the icons, creating like a social media feel was really, really fun for me. Yeah.
And what was most like yucky, challenging? You really wished, you know, you were okay if you didn't have to do it ever again, or I mean, you know, what did you dislike? Anything?
What did I dislike?
Or it was a challenge, or?
It was challenging because the client thought his personas were a completely different persona than what it actually was. So I think the part that I wish was, not that I didn't have to do again, but was more clear, was that the client actually understood their personas before handing something off with expectations. Right? Yeah.
What, and I think I know you said it in the beginning, but can you say again, like, what were the different, were you involved in the research also? You were doing interviews?
Yeah, I did user interviews, usability interviews, and I also did some competitor analysis. I didn't include the competitor analysis, but I did that as well.
Cool.
Yeah. This was my first real client project.
That's great.
Thanks.
Is there anything else that you want to show? Because I think you might have a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
Or do you have any questions about that project? Or if you want to show something else, Anar, is that okay? If there's time?
Yeah, that should be fine. We have maybe 5 minutes.
Cool.
I can show something that I worked on in school. This shouldn't actually take that long.
Great.
Okay, so this was an app that I created in school. It's called NYC Creatives, and it's an event app that helps creatives find events in New York City. This app focuses on like arts, fashion, design, and technology. And then I basically just designed the MVP and the marketing site for this app. The problem statement was, how can we help creatives find activities that align with who they are? Because a lot of event apps out there are not really centered around designers, even though they have different genres that you can like click through. It's really not focused on like connecting with other artists or things of that nature. So yeah, basically NYC Creatives helps creatives find a New York City. And then the challenge was creating the visual design of a mobile responsive event app that targets creatives in addition to building marketing, in addition to building a marketing site as well. This project really focused on branding and logo design, a little bit of user research and user interviews, user interaction, and then the marketing site, and then a few high fidelity screens. So I did like a competitive analysis on like Eventbrite, MeetUp, Facebook, NY Tech, and Eventzilla. The information is there, but we don't have that much time, so I won't go too deep into it. This was a really fun part for me. I created logo concepts for NYC Creatives, and then the 3 concepts that I came up was the minimalist. So it's a simple outline of the NYC cityscape, and it's a symbol that everyone knows and loves. This was the iconic train emblem, which is basically NYC's train emblem, and it represents the heart of the city, and the bulb represents the creativity and inspiration found here. And then the last and final one, which is the one that I went with, is the upside down city. And it's a bulb within an upside down city, which basically just shows like creativity and inspired minds, because it's a light bulb. And because the city is upside down, it's a bit unorthodox, but you have to be when you are creative. So that's the one that I went with. And then based on that, I created style tiles and tested them on users to figure out which one I should go with. I actually created style tiles and mood boards for it. So this one was like bold, minimal, using a lot of blues and yellows. And then I created this style tile for it. And then this one was more of the energetic style tile, playing around with like art, coloring outside the lines, using a couple of different colors. And this was the mood board for it. And this was the winner based on the user interviews. Users felt that it was fun, energetic, promising, and inspiring, which is what I was going for. I don't think I have that much time, but yeah, let's.
Oh, sorry. Let's move on to the, I guess, final just response to this project as well.
Okay. So yeah, this was just the prototype of onboarding into the sign up screen.
Super creative. I think that you're presenting your work really well. I think it's interesting. I love that you have like what you did, and I'm following it all. So thank you for showing that project. I don't want to take, Tiffany, do you?
Yeah. Yeah, just a couple of comments. I totally agree. You're a really strong presenter and very engaged. I guess the only thing I forgot to mention for your Line Media project, just a few things. Like Carolyn, like when she asked the questions about constraints and challenges, I felt like that was kind of something I felt was lacking in that project. Like, it's an MVP. What were the constraints for that? What would a future iteration look like? What didn't make it? What feature requests didn't make it? How did you work across teams with PMs, engineers, anyone else to kind of execute that? And also a few other things, like you dive right into user research. And then you talk about kind of iterations and then the persona. I felt like maybe you could dive a little bit more into like just more of a background into like the problem space and the project itself. And then when you talk about like your user research, discuss like who was involved, how did you recruit? And then I kind of would have expected the personas after that. And if not, then maybe explain why you decided to structure your portfolio the way you did. Like, did it reflect what occurred in real life? And then I suppose the other thing too, like with the personas, I'm expecting more of like, a little bit more in depth in how you incorporate that, like how you linked like the personas, like the research exactly into the features. And when you discuss like the before and after, how did you weigh the it's great that you have metrics, but also I'm wondering like, when you're thinking about it through like a feasibility lens or like, well, why should we include this? Like, how did you weigh and prioritize those like pain points and user requests in the final designs? And also like your conclusion, it'd be really great to hear like, what you learned, what the future MVPs could look like, or like future iterations would look like. Anything else, just about you and your personal learnings would be great. So yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. And I guess, do we have one or two questions, Zeke, from the audience?
Yes. Ryan, I hope you don't mind me calling you out. But Ryan, kind of just had a comment. So you mentioned that you discovered 77% of people in the original project found event details difficult to find. And so that is a really important claim. But his comment was that just make sure you kind of provide some background in like how you got to that claim. That seemed to be missed. And yeah, whenever you sort of make a claim like that, make sure you always provide some clarity around it so people can understand how you got there. Ryan, also, please feel free to chime in if I'm paraphrasing.
No, I would say generally the breadth and then also the depth on a few different things because as I think of designers that I want to let loose, I'm always trying to gauge how much I have to package them with other people or not package them with other people in order to pull off what I want out of my team. And so I'm always trying to get a sense of, is this somebody I can just let loose on the entire thing and kind of where they gauge. And so the breadth and then also the depth on just a few items to help highlight the strengths of what you can do and what you can do. And that's okay, because we all can't do everything. And I've never looked for somebody. Well, that's not true. I do look for people who can do everything, but I've never found them. And so, just help engage that as you go through and sell yourself. It's, I think, a nice thing to do.
Thank you.
Cool. And unfortunately, we are out of time, so we will need to move on now to Miso's presentation. So Miso, you want to take it away?
Yeah. Thank you, Alexis.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm not muted. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, and we can see your screen as well.
Okay, perfect. So hi, I'm Miso. I'm a UX designer based in Los Angeles. And before you think of any miso soup jokes, it actually means smile in Korean. And I hope you have a little bit of a smile while I present my portfolio today. So before I dive into my portfolio, here is a quick overview of the work I did with Pelotea. So Pelotea is a soccer insurance startup.
Oh, sorry. I think, I don't know if it's just me, but
I
I don't see your slide. No,
okay.
It's still on your cover. There you go.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Okay, can you, sorry.
no, it's okay. So I can see you now, but whatever you did
Oh.
right before you stopped sharing, that it
Yeah.
started working. So I think you just
Okay.
need to make sure your
Oh.
mouse is hovering over the window. Yeah, nice.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mhm.
So Pelotea is a soccer insurance startup based in Ecuador where players can schedule games and purchase insurance to get coverage for their soccer-related injuries. So I came on board March of this year to redesign the insurance enrollment interface to increase the acquisition of new members and solve the pain points of users had when signing up. And the second part of the project was to create a seamless claiming process for the existing members. And finally, I helped build their first design system and incorporated existing brand colors to their design system. So this is the initial version of the Pelotea insurance enrollment interface. So this interface was like built with a template and without considering the end user needs. So as a result, we saw high drop-off of users during the enrollment process. So it needed to be redesigned so that players can like easily understand the coverage information and intuitively sign up for the membership. So this is an initial version of the insurance claim process, and it did not give users a clear direction on how to fill it out correctly so that their claim would be approved. And this is the process that I took. I first conducted user research and collaborated with the insurance expert for information gathering. Then using the data from the user research, I constructed user stories and created solutions to discuss with the team. And then finally, after gaining feedback from and then afterwards, I developed mid-fidelity prototypes to gain feedback from the developers and the PM and prepare for usability testing with real users. And afterwards, after gaining real feedback from the users and the team, I iterated on the designs and produced high-fidelity mockups for the handoff. So I started with a generative research to gain a better understanding of how soccer players in Mexico and Ecuador viewed insurance and what their reasoning is. And what I learned was that participants valued being insured for their soccer-related injuries because many players are independent and they do not have insurance from their employers. And pre-pandemic, players played as often as every day on 2 to 3 different teams per week. And this increased the chances of them getting injured frequently. And Pelotea Care was addressing the pain point of players not confirming for games, since players are only covered for the games that they have confirmed on the platform. So after conducting user research and getting to know more about the soccer players in Latin America, I looked into 2 innovative insurance companies. One is Lemonade and one is Geico. So Lemonade uses the AI bot Maya to create a personable and friendly insurance enrollment process. And for Geico, it was extremely easy to complete tasks due to consistent actionable buttons, good visual hierarchy, and easy to understand language. So both products use clear and friendly language, offer transparency of coverage information, which I believe contributed to a delightful user experience because when we think of insurance, it's very dry, it's very complicated and just difficult. Yes, this is the initial version of the enrollment screens that I showed before. So the home screen was very text heavy and didn't really incentivize users to continue. And once users were on the path to enrolling, there was a missing progress bar, which didn't help users determine how long the enrollment process is or what step they are at. And overall, the process kind of repeats the same information on 2 different places, or it lacks the right information like cancellation policy or coverage details. But I decided to prioritize redesigning the insurance claiming process instead of the enrollment first, because even if we acquire new users to the insurance membership, if they are constantly facing difficulty with filing claims, we would not be able to retain and grow our customer base. And lastly, this is the My Claim screen, and it does not support users who would like to check status of their claim or upload copies of their medical bills. So after identifying the problem space and the pain points that users had, I developed a user story to help communicate my designs to the team, as well as like ideate the best solutions. So here we have Carlos. He's a new Pelotea Care member. He just twisted his ankle during a soccer match. So as an injured soccer player, Carlos wants to file an insurance claim so that he can get reimbursed for his medical expense. And the success criteria would be to quickly and easily file insurance claim for Carlos. And before sketching out the wireframes, I assembled user flow, this user flow of the insurance claim process. And the goal of the flow is to like create a simple and easy to understand process to ensure injured players don't suffer cognitive overload or get frustrated trying to start an insurance claim. And using Figma as my design and prototyping tool, I developed a mid-fidelity prototype to get feedback of the app's functionality from the team and to prepare for usability testing with real users. And during the usability testing, all 3 participants were able to successfully complete the task of submitting a claim. However, one participant mentioned how like the app didn't really feel like a soccer insurance app and felt like almost like any other insurance app. So to help users resonate more with the product and to allow injured soccer players to easily fill out the claim, I redesigned the categories part, and I put in like the categories of like injuries that's most sustained by soccer players so that users can truly feel like, okay, this is like an app made for us. And this screen is what users see when they submit a claim. So one of the feedback that I received from the PM was that soccer players are likely to submit claims frequently just because of how often they get injured. And we wanted users to be shown the full details of what to expect next, instead of having them engage with the same AI bot, Diego, every time they start a claim. And this is the new claiming process after iteration. And I really wanted like users like Carlos to feel like, oh, that was like really easy to complete. So users have access to the main button to start a claim right from the homepage. And to make the decision-making process easier and quicker, I added the list of common injuries sustained by soccer players. And this speech detector was added to make completing tasks easier, especially like if a player injured his finger or injured his hands. And I added the review screen, which was missing in the previous design, to ensure players had the chance to verify the information before submitting to avoid like claims being denied due to mistakes users made. And lastly, I designed for 2 use cases. One was a player who needs immediate medical help, and one was like a player like Carlos who need more guidance on the next step. And this is the claim status screens. So compared to the initial version, the new version allows players to easily access the existing claims right from their homepage and check the status of their claims. And players are given transparency on what the status of the claim is right here. And they can also upload any documents that they need to get reimbursed. And this project lasted 3 months. I helped redesign 2 main flows and implemented company branding into the design system.
Cool. Thank you, Miso.
Yeah.
Almost exactly 10 minutes too. That's awesome. Nice. All right, Carolyn, Tiffany.
Nice presentation, Miso. Really nice. Just sorry, brain freeze. I was gonna say that if you are interviewing, are people interviewing via Zoom now? They are, right? So just make sure that when you're doing that, that your screens, like that you can make your, like, I know I'm wearing glasses and I need new glasses right now, but it's really hard to see. So if you can make the like actual visuals like bigger, or, you know, if you have to break it up just in case you're meeting with someone via Zoom so that they can see your designs, that's all. That was just my initial comment for right this moment.
Oh, thank you.
Tiffany, do you?
Yeah, I was going to echo what you said. Maybe, you know, if it's a matter of space, you can focus on just like a few screens, I think would be super helpful. I was also going to mention, yeah, your presentation was really good. I really liked your explanations, they're really in depth. The only things that I guess I felt were kind of missing was like a little bit more of like background, like what tools did you use? What were the exact deliverables? How did you work with other like teams? Like just like a little bit more of that like real world experience you can talk about would be really helpful. And this is like a small thing, but I noticed that a lot of like junior designers include this, like when they have personas or stories, but they include like the age or just like some tangential like background information. If it's like a matter of like your target demographic, like that's something I think would be really useful. Otherwise, it's one of those things that feels like superfluous. You don't need to necessarily add that in your presentation. And right, so yeah, and I guess that's it. Besides, yeah, last thing, the user research. I kind of wanted to have like a brief rundown on like how many users you interviewed, what tools you used, what was the age bracket, background, how did you synthesize, just a little bit more of that, and also the framework you used when you were doing the usability test would be really helpful to know as well.
I really liked the slides you had that showed your process. Am I muted? No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, and that you spoke about that. And I think for all the presenters, as a hiring man, as someone who hires people, I want to know, like what Tiffany said, what are the other groups and teams that you work with for in general, but definitely if you're talking about a specific project. So how did you work with you know, development team, product managers, you know, marketing person, like, I don't know, who were the stakeholders, like, how did the team work? So I thought the process slide was really awesome, but I thought also just to throw in there, or just be prepared, or to throw it in some way in conversation, you know, all the different roles and people that you worked with. I have like this most gigantic beetle in my, I'm so sorry. I have a huge beetle in my house. Hold on. Okay.
That's concerning.
All right. I'll save it later. Sorry about that. Sorry.
No worries. You got to handle those beetles sometimes.
Like this big. It's under a cup right now, but I'll save them after this.
Cool. Anything else, Tiffany?
Yeah, for your presentation, were you thinking about just including one case study to go through, or multiple ones?
I have 2 other projects. So then I was thinking, like, for the interview, if they, you know, depending on what product they have, I'll like show them one of my case studies that most is similar. Like if they ask me something like, oh, do you have experience working with like native apps? Then I'll show like one of my personal projects that I did. But yeah, on the presentation, I have like 2 other case studies that I'm working on.
Cool.
These were really great presentations. I think in the context of the, you know, in the real world, if you were going in or Zooming or whatever to talk to somebody about a role, you know, it would be a larger conversation, obviously, and you would be showing more work than just one case study, most likely. And you guys would be talking about like, what is that potential role, and how, you know, how your past roles kind of, you know, make you the right fit for this role, like what that experience was. So I think it's kind of, this is a unique situation because we don't have those pieces to talk about.
Yeah.
So you would obviously kind of be doing that naturally, I think, if you were in that, you know, in a situation where you're actually, you know, interviewing somewhere. But I think everyone showed amazing case studies are hard, you know, and it's really easy to go too deep, too light. And so you guys all went for it, and there's a lot of information there. Definitely, like, our job is to simplify and like highlight what's most important, and to like make the complex simple. So anytime we can like lift anything and highlight, you know, all the things that we're talking about, but you know what I mean? I know that doesn't make sense, but good job. Does anyone have questions for us, for Tiffany and I specifically about, you know, do you have any questions about your stuff for us? Miso?
Oh,
It's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
yeah.
Yeah, Miso or anybody else, if you have any questions for the presenters, the reviewers, any comments, would love to hear them. And or Zeke, if you've gotten any in your inbox and you want to bring that up.
I have not.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, going once, going twice. We are getting some thank yous in. Yeah, no,
we have one that just came in.
Okay.
So are there any suggestions that you guys have on how to present a case study that's not in your portfolio?
Why would it not be? I'm just curious though, why would it not be in your portfolio? Or what's special about it? Like, how is it different? I'm just curious, like, what does that mean?
Is it an NDA or?
Callie, if you want to provide some more context to this question.
Yeah, I was given a suggestion that, well, we can already see what's in your portfolio, so we want you to present something that we can't see on our own. And I don't have other projects, so how do I create one so that I have an additional thing to present, or do I just get confident enough with the ones that it seemed like a hard thing as a junior person who's at a boot camp? Like, I don't have a plethora of projects, and so when they want to see something additional to what's in my portfolio, is that just me that's not the right fit for me, or should I work on something to have in my extra back pocket? Because I think my best ones are in my portfolio, and those are the ones I want to talk about. So I was wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's like their way of asking you, you know, like, is that like a design challenge? Do you have any more context to that? It's a little weird. I haven't heard anyone do something like that. If they want to see something that's not in your portfolio, honestly, they would ask, you know, you to do a design challenge, right? But otherwise, like, if it's just a matter of creating something new, maybe that's like an opportunity for you to go out there and create an additional project. But yeah, I don't know if I want to work for a company like that. That seems like a lot of work. Yeah, I think that's really up to you. But essentially, I feel like you can probably follow the same process that you have in your other projects and just go out there and and create something new.
That's an interesting ask. I've never, usually, yeah, you put all your good stuff in your portfolio. I mean, yeah, sometimes you're going to be asked to do some assignment, or a lot of times it's like, what's an app that you use all the time that you hate, and how would you improve it? You know, so you could always take, if you want, you know, you could always be prepared. I think everyone should be prepared with that one. But if you wanted to execute on that, to have it as a back pocket thing, because that is something that probably everyone ends up getting asked. It's like, okay, what's an app you use all the time and how would you make it better? Like, why does it suck and how would you make it better? And, you know, so it's like on the fly, you're like, you know, so you could definitely always use kind of something like that to create, well, actually, you've asked me this question and I actually have this thing. I use PayPal all the time and like, I hate it. Here's the pain points and here's the 3 things that I would fix. So you could kind of make it kind of simple like that to just address it, but it's kind of a strange request, but.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that and say, from my experience, you know, if you don't want to go and look at some apps, you can also go and use the company that you're applying for, right? You can look at their apps, their products, their own website, and look at those pain points and give it back to them. I feel like I've heard some companies like using that as a design exercise. So I think that's something great you can familiarize yourself with and do, because they love knowing what's wrong with their stuff.
Yeah. That's a common challenge. Like, take this thing and how would you make it better? And do it for us in a day and for free. So, thank you for the question. That's a good question though. Hope we gave you somewhat of an answer.
Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
I have a few projects where I didn't work on it from like start to finish, but like, let's say I did like prototyping and the high fidelity screens or something like that. How would I add that into my portfolio if it's not like the full case study?
So I guess like in the real world, a lot of times you're not designing something from beginning to end. Like for me, a lot of times I'm just working on like a small bit, or a designer maybe a year or so ago started a design and then I have to kind of finish it. You know, it really depends. But I think what's wonderful is to include those things. It shows that you have a lot of real world experience and ability to work with challenges. So I think being able to discuss early on, like, you know, the constraints, the challenges, the goals of that project, and clearly say, you know, I didn't, you know, use user research, we didn't have time, but, you know, and seeing how you're able to work with those compromises and being able to detail them when you talk about your before and afters, your iterations. So yeah, just like use what you have. You don't need to make up stuff that isn't there, but just talk about all those things very clearly.
Yeah, I think you definitely shouldn't, you know, when we're just starting out kind of thing, it's of course you're going to wear more hats and kind of work on something more from the beginning to the end. But like Tiffany said, you're going to be part of a team. So you're going to be doing different pieces and you're not going to leave that stuff out of the portfolio. And in fact, that will help, you know, propel some of the conversations that these people want to have with you about understanding how you know, who you work with. And they want, you know, people who can be the bridge builder between, you know, it's like you've got the business and the users and those 2 circles, and you're that sweet spot in the middle, and they want to know how you're bridging the gap. And so whether that's between, you know, your customers and the business, or if it's like the developers and the product managers, like they want to know how you fit in. So don't feel like just because you didn't do the final, you know, visual design on something that you can't show it. Just, you know, just like you have a thing that says objective, you know, you say, my role was, you know, I did the prototypes, or, you know, whatever it is. I think that's super important, and it will flesh out, you know, what you have. And, you know, as you continue into your career, you'll decide, you know what, I'm going to take that thing out. I don't need it anymore. I've got this other thing. But yeah, you got to use what you've got.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, and I think what Ryan said earlier too, I think when presenting yourself, speaking as a product manager that's interviewed designers and associate PMs, it's important to differentiate between instances where you use we versus where you use I, and make it really clear where you're a driver versus where you're a passenger, right? And like, when I'm looking at like an APM or like a junior designer and, you know, we're interviewing them, like you can just based on their work experience, you can tell that a lot of like, you know, if they're saying I a lot, that's probably not the case. And then they might be using we a lot because they're like uncertain about where they contributed. So I think a lot of that is doing like the self-reflection necessary to have the confidence and I guess self-esteem to say like, I did this and I was able to make this impact, but within the context of we, right? Within the context of the product team or the engineering team or the executives even, right? Like at the end of the day, it's all collaboration, but I think it's really important to be able to clearly differentiate between your impact on the greater outcome within the context of we. And I think that's what sort of Ryan was touching on earlier, where he wants to get a sense of like, where do I place you, right? Do I give you full autonomy because you have been driving all these initiatives in your past role? Or would it be better to pair you maybe with a senior designer or directly with a PM or something where you guys could sort of fill in the gaps between one another's skill sets? And then that'll set you up for success. Whereas, you know, if you couldn't, not you, but, you know, any maybe junior designer, maybe they use I a little bit more than they should, then we're like, oh, cool. Like they have all this experience. And then we throw you day one. All right, you're building out our design system and style guide end to end, have it ready by Friday, right? Then you're way over your head and you're set for failure from day one. So I think it's really important to just differentiate between the I and the we, the driver and the passenger, and where you fit within that.
Thanks.
Cool. We are over, so I appreciate everybody that has stayed on. This has been super awesome. This went way better than I thought it would, honestly. Like I said, this is the first one Product Hive LA has, I guess, run, and this has been super great. I really appreciate the hard work that the presenters put in, and then also the reviewers. Like we just sent the reviewers all of your portfolios, but obviously the case studies, like we didn't send them any of that. And just the sort of on the spot feedback and questions and everything, Carolyn and Tiffany, you both provided, that was awesome and really insightful, I think, not only for the presenters, but everyone here, myself included. I'm stoked to do this again.